Well, hello everyone, welcome. I'm Katie. This is a Fountain Pen Awakening, and it's been a minute. I know, right? Hope that wherever you are in the world, you're doing super well. It's kind of crazy out there, but let's do us and let's not worry about the craziness out there. It's been a minute because I've been waiting for this pen to arrive, and it's been a month. And I ordered it from the States on Amazon, and it's taken forever and a day to arrive. Usually it doesn't take that long. So, anyhow, today I finally decided to come on because it arrived yesterday. I had a bit of a play around with it, and today I want to react to me buying a Jinhao. Now, why did I buy a Jinhao at 10? One, because I wanted this pen originally, and I still do want it, maybe, which is the original Pilot Capless Stripes, which is a beautiful looking pen. But it costs anywhere between 450 Australian dollars to maybe 600, 650, depending where you purchase it. And I ended up getting this pen, which is like anywhere between 42 to 45, 46 Australian dollars. It's the same look. Apparently it's the same weight. So I thought to myself, hello, instead of spending all this money to test out a pen, how about I buy one of these, right? And see how I like it, how it feels, how that clip kind of feels in my hand, because I grip my pen in a certain way, that clip might be annoying. And secondly, because I've been watching Seaweed Kiss's channel. She's on YouTube, I think she's like on all social media, but she's been raving about these Jinhao 10 because she loves a capless pen. Okay, and she did get the original Pilot capless off Amazon, the yellow one. It does not have the gold nib though. This one just has a normal steel nib. And then she purchased a couple of Jinhaos, and she really enjoys writing with them and saying, well, they feel the same, they look the same, and she loves the click clack. Don't we all love a click clack pen? I wanted a click clack pen, so I did eventually get this. It has finally arrived. I played around with it yesterday, and today I'm going to give you my reaction. So grab yourself a coffee, a tea, a beverage of your choice. Let's flip this camera and let's talk about it. Alright, so here we are. So the pen is called a Jinhao 10 press. So they call it a press, I guess because it clicks and clacks. It is a 0.5mm nib, so a fine nib, and it's called Gradient Grey. Now this pen arrived like this, in this plastic bag from the States. This was my expression when this pen arrived, this piece of plastic inside of this. Do you see my expression? Now, no box. You're sending it all the way from the US to Australia, and you don't want to put this pen in a box? I mean, $44 is $44. Give me a box. Anyhow, having said that, after my initial if you're wondering if the Jinhao 10 is actually a tough pen, well, this is the way it travelled to me. So there are pros and cons, I guess. This is got some little bit of a bubble wrap situation feel to it, but as we would say in Australia, bloody oath, mate. Do you want to put it in a box? Okay, so let's get back to it. So it came in this plastic, which is no protection whatsoever, but it did have this plastic cap over the back of it. So that's, yeah. Anywho, so this is the beautiful pen. It's called Gradient Grey, and I don't know if you can see it, but it sort of goes darker to lighter. It's actually quite a good looking pen. It's very heavy, to be honest. It's comparable to the weight of a Lamy 2000 with the cap on. If you take the cap off, this is lighter. Now, I'm not a professional, and I don't kind of do pen reviews. This is just my reaction. So I don't have a scale where I can weigh the pens, but I can definitely say that's quite a weighty pen. Now, my whole thing was, when I hold the pen and write with it, will this cap here be annoying to me? Because I kind of sort of have a bit of a twist grip. And another thing is, this metal bit here is very slippery.
And because it gets quite warm here in Queensland, Australia, I do tend to get sweaty hands. And so yesterday when I was writing with it, I felt my fingers slip. Now, usually kind of I hold my pen like this, and so my fingers are tending to rest on this, and it does have a little bit of a step. You can feel that groove. So I'm sort of trying to adjust having my fingers back here, which then, you know, are further apart, because here it tapers down going towards the nib, but then it sort of gets a little bit thicker on the barrel and then tapers down on the back there. So this ideally is where I want to, you know, hold my pen. If I go further up, it slips, and if I sit further back, this clip doesn't annoy me. The fact of the matter is that it's quite a heavy pen, and I like to journal. And the whole idea of getting this pen was I wanted it to be my journal pen. As for size comparisons, it's kind of, you know, very similar, if not exactly the same, as both the TWSBI Eco and Alamy. Obviously, when you click it, it becomes longer than both your Alamy and your TWSBI. This is Alamy. This is the Alamy Aluminium Hufflepuff special edition from Harry Potter. That's my special edition, Eco, Onyx and Green. Alright, so kind of the whole idea was for me to get this pen to journal with. I got a fine nib so I can use it in my Hobonichi. But yeah, I was quite disappointed, to be honest, because when I did first ink it up, it's quite dry. It's a very dry writer. And what I found when I first inked it up, I actually inked it up with my Kiro Stone Road of Guillaume, because I wanted to sort of like match the greys in here. It's a warm grey, and this is kind of like a grey brown. And then when I put it in there, when I inked it up, I found it to be quite dry, and it doesn't really, let's say, shade. And I like this ink because it's a shader. So currently I have it in my Skullkill, and it writes really well. It does have that sort of darker shading, and then when you write, you know, quick with it, it keeps that brown, whereas in the Jinhao, it sort of tends to go really pale. And I know it's a fine nib, but if we have a look at the writing, it's very comparable. I've got a fine nib in this pen as well, but see how it's very pale? And then I felt like as I was writing with it, it would sort of dry. So I thought maybe it's the ink. And then I popped this other ink in, which is my Rui Dunk from Jinhao. But again, this ink writes well in a fine, but it's also very dry. So again, I was writing with it and it wasn't quite working for me. It was sort of drying out. And this doesn't have a great ink capacity, to be honest with you guys. So at the moment, it's got this little, it's quite tiny, converter in it. And I find that you sort of have to go in there and sort of twist to flood the feed often, which is super annoying. So it's not that it dries out like because it's capless. It dries out because the ink doesn't go through the feed. That makes sense. So anyway, I tried the Rui Dunk. I then tried my Sailor Urameko Seki, which this ink I kind of have a love-hate relationship with, because it's kind of a grey, mauvey, greeny one. It's one of those chroma shaders, but depending on what paper you write on, it sort of, you know, tends to go more grey. So I thought, okay, you know, with a grey pen. The thing is that on this paper here, it looks really nice. And then when I wrote in my journal yesterday, I didn't like it because it was grey. It wasn't kind of, it didn't come through with this like mauvey, you know, shading. It was just grey. And so I took that out. And then now I've got last of Pen BBS Mung Bean Cake, because it's sort of like a similar colour to the body of the pen. But again, it's very pale. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I want a pen that feels good in my hands. I want a pen that clicks. That's very satisfying. But I need it to, you know, I want it to write smoothly, and I want it to last, and I don't want it to dry out. And, you know, I'm still kind of having to work on this grip here. Now, I haven't used this since yesterday, so this is my first writing with it today. And I like the fact that it's come out strong out of the box, like dark and deep. And let's see, oops, I spelled Jinhao wrong. How embarrassment, how, like that. And here it says 10 press. Well, I would call it like capless. So it's a fine. And the color is gradient gray. I'm liking that it's kind of looking a bit darker than yesterday when I first was using it. I mean, it keeps up, but as we can see, it sort of gets a bit lighter now. It's starting to get lighter as I write with it. Yeah, I'm starting to feel it dry up a bit, and I keep adjusting my fingers. I keep sort of wanting to go there, and then that feels uncomfortable. And because I kind of like twist my fingers a bit, I can feel this clip in the middle, and you can't even remove it because it's kind of like not a removable one. I mean, not that I don't like clips and hardware, don't get me wrong. I actually like a pen with hardware. I don't mind the look of it. It's just that I feel my fingers kind of are sliding towards it. And it's not very grippy. Do you know what I mean? I kind of feel my fingers slip on it. I like the color of it. It's kind of pearlescent. But on the whole, I feel like if I got the stripes, for instance, because it actually has grooves on the body, I feel that I might have a little bit more purchase. Or if you get the other model that feels like rubber, I'm not entirely sure if it's rubber or what kind of material it is. The matte ones, they might have more purchase on them when you write with them. So it's not super comfortable to write with. See, my fingers are slipping down at the moment. It's a good looking pen. I like the fact that you can do this. But if I'm totally honest, it feels heavy. This thing here annoys me, this step between the barrel and I guess this is the grip section. Like my fingers slip towards the clip and it kind of dries, tends to dry. How can I explain it? As you're writing with it, it starts off, then you can sort of feel the flow dry and it gets paler and paler. Now that might just simply be an ink problem, you know. Maybe the inks that I've used in it so far are quite dry inks. So with it being a dry writer, using dry inks might not be the ideal for it. I mean, the nib is fine. It's a smooth writer. It's just not Jinhao. See, I wanted to write Jinhao question mark instead of Jinhao. And even when I kind of do my I call them swirls, but figure eights, I guess, they kind of tend to sort of dry up a bit. So I'm just sort of asking myself if the feel of this pen and the weight of this pen is similar to a Pilot capless. Do I really want it? And I'd have to explore if the stripes has this kind of step in the middle here. That's quite annoying. Or if it's smooth. Because if it's smooth, it's okay. Because this is smooth too, right? See how with this one my fingers kind of are here, and this doesn't annoy me because you can't even feel it, and this because the material has got a texture to it, your fingers don't tend to slip, right? And the weight of the pen is quite balanced in my hand. It's only when you put the cap on that this becomes quite a hefty pen. But this, it's really heavy. It's one of my heaviest pens, which is a shame because I actually really like the look of it. I really like the color of it, but there's no grip to it, you know. So, my friends, yeah, new pen day. But having said that, I mean, there are very, very many videos out there where people are quite happy with the way the pen writes or how it looks and, you know, and stuff like that. I'm just sort of struggling with this step here and the slippiness of it. But again, I live in a climate where it's mostly warm all the time, and where, you know, your hands do tend to sweat and you need to be able to grip your pens in a way that, you know, is comfortable. So I'm going to keep playing around with this pen, and hopefully I can find an ink that is a little bit wetter. This ink that I'm writing with is the Pen BBS 443, and it is the Mung Bean Cake. And if we compare it to yesterday, see how light it was yesterday? It's writing a little bit darker, and also I sort of thought maybe the nib is a little bit stiff, so I try to kind of open the tines a bit by pressing down a little bit to open them up a little bit more. And I feel that it is writing a little bit less dry, and I sort of think this ink is a little less dry, but I find that grey inks and lighter inks in general tend to be a little bit drier. So for shorter writing sessions and just taking down notes and stuff and just playing with it, click, clack, it's okay. But for maybe longer writing sessions, it's not quite the ticket, and I'd rather have spent 44 Australian dollars to discover that rather than having spent 450 Australian dollars for a pen that I might not, you know, be able to write with and feels too heavy in my hand. But having said that, I've watched like people, for instance, Monster Coffee, oh, I can never remember, sorry. She's got a Pilot capless and she writes with it like with black ink, and she's got really tiny, neat writing, and she seems to be doing okay with it. She does a lot of journaling with it. So I don't know, but that's my reaction to the Jinhao 10 and this sort of gorgeous gradient color. I like it. I like the look of it, but the actual writing experience is a bit of a question mark for me. I don't know if it's just a question of me getting used to it, of finding the right ink, or, you know, it's not quite the ticket for my personal writing experience or enjoyment of using the pen in the way that I like to use them. Alright, I think I've rambled on enough, and so thank you very much for watching, for liking, for subscribing, and until my next video, ciao.